You don't know the moment everything shifts, until you stop chasing her and she finally feels the silence she thought she wanted. It happens quietly. No big announcement. No dramatic goodbye. Just a subtle withdrawal of your energy, the same energy she once depended on but pretended she didn't need. At first she doesn't even notice. She assumes you're just busy or distracted, or giving her space she never asked for but always expected you'd fill anyway. She doesn't understand that something inside you has changed. Something she thought she'd always control. Because for the first time, you've stopped fighting for someone who wouldn't lift a finger for you. And that shift hits her harder than any argument. There's a look a woman gives when she feels the loss of a man she thought she could replace. It's not loud. It's not emotional. It's subtle, like a delay in her breath, a flicker behind her eyes, a hesitation in her tone. She starts replaying every moment where you were there, fully invested, fully present, and she treated it like background noise. She remembers every text she left unread, every effort she brushed off, every moment you showed up and she didn't appreciate it. That's the moment she realizes she pushed too far. When you stop caring, something uncomfortable awakens in her, an insecurity she tried to bury. She starts questioning if the emotional control she thought she had over the situation was real, or a story she told herself. She feels the absence of your attention like a cold draft in a room that used to feel warm. Your silence becomes louder than any words. The distance forces her to sit with herself, and that's the one place she never expected to feel uncomfortable. She thought you'd always be available, always waiting, always hoping. But now she sees the truth. You were a man with options, value, and a heart she mistook for weakness. The moment you step back, she starts stepping forward. She checks her phone more often. She replays old conversations. She looks for signs of you in places she once ignored. She remembers your tone, your patience, your presence, your masculine steadiness she believed would never fade. And underneath all her calmness is panic. Because the scariest realization for a woman who thought she could do better is finding out she already had the man she needed. Your absence forces her into a mirror she avoided. She sees the effort you gave without conditions. She sees the consistency she dismissed. She sees the love she didn't reciprocate. And the truth stings. It hits her that you didn't stop caring because of someone else. You stopped caring because you finally remembered who you were. And that is the moment everything changes, for her and for you. Start with a punch. You are losing arguments you never signed up for. They don't argue to solve problems. They argue to control outcomes. Emotions become the weapon, facts the casualty. He brings logic, she brings storms of feeling. The conversation fractures into fragments and the fragments win. Notice the timing. Tears arrive when your point lands. Anger spikes when accountability is demanded. Confusion blooms when clarity would end the game. That's not coincidence. It's a pattern. You try to stay on topic. It doesn't work. The issue mutates. It splits into old hurts, stray insults, vague complaints. Every attempt to focus is met with a pivot. You respond to one charge and 3 more appear. The map keeps changing, you get lost. This is emotional misdirection. It's designed to slow you down, deflect attention, and exhaust your resolve. When you tire, you apologize. When you apologize, control shifts. The goal is maintaining influence, not finding truth. Watch how stories are used. A single memory becomes a library of grievances. Yesterday's small mistake becomes evidence of a lifetime of failure. Context is erased. Rituals of blame replace honest assessment. He's defending a point. She's enlisting past versions of him as witnesses against him. Look at language. You always and you never aren't statements. They are traps. Absolutes erase nuance and force a defensive posture. Your explanations become admissions. Your clarifications become confessions. The courtroom is emotional. You are the defendant. Profit motives hide in tears. Sympathy buys time. Shock buys advantage. The louder the display, the less scrutiny the claim receives. People rally behind visible pain. Visible pain shortcuts questions. It closes curiosity and opens verdict. There is skill here. This isn't random volatility. It's practiced. Small tests reveal what is tolerated. Boundaries that are rewarded get pushed. Limits that go unreinforced expand. Over years, trivial concessions become major sacrifices. If you want to counter it, change the rules. Refuse to be drawn into side alleys. Call the topic by name. Ask for examples and timelines. Demand specifics. Don't chase feelings with logic. Anchor the conversation with agreed facts. Emotional high ground works because you respect it. When you stop treating theatrical pain as evidence, the tactic loses power. Silence is not surrender. Questions are not attacks. A steady voice isn't aggression. Cultivate allies, friends who reflect reality, not amplify drama. Document conversations. Set non-negotiables and explain consequences. Consistency is the antidote to manipulation. Be ruthless with confusion. Label it. Break it down. If the argument is 1,000 threats, pull one and follow it to its source. Don't get distracted by noise. You will be accused of coldness. You will be told you're dismissive. That's the litmus test. If they panic, you're close to clarity. Keep your standards. Protect your time. Protect your mind. The battlefield looks like conversation, but the prize is control. Recognize the terrain, reframe the rules, and you stop losing to tactics disguised as feelings. Stay sharp. Culture has rewritten the rules so emotion is evidence and men must prove their humanity. The world applauds visible distress and punishes visible strength. Displayed vulnerability becomes a trophy. Expressed frustration becomes a verdict. Society trains judges to read tears as testimony and a raised voice as guilt. Public sympathy is biased by appearance. A woman's breakdown collects support before a single fact is checked. Men who show pain are told to toughen up. The response is swift and uneven. Institutions echo this bias. Courts, workplaces, and social networks reward the person who performs hurt and penalize the person who stands firm. This imbalance is not random empathy. It is structural advantage. When one gender's feelings are given automatic credibility, the instruments of fairness tilt. Complaints gain momentum because they are believable without proof. Accusations become stories that travel farther than explanations. Consequences follow perception. Jobs are at stake when allegations are loud. Custody battles turn on convincing narratives. Careers fracture under suspicion. Men lose access to reputation and resources while proofs gather like dust. Look at escalation. Small dramatic acts obtain outsized returns. A late-night rant becomes a dossier. A shouted sentence turns into a character assessment. A single episode spins into a pattern. The punishment often arrives before the investigation begins. The double standard is rehearsed in everyday life. She can storm a room and be comforted. He can lose control and be labeled dangerous. At scale, this breeds self-censorship. Men mute themselves to avoid misinterpretation. They cancel honest feelings to remain safe. The cost is cultural silencing. Emotional honesty collapses into risk management. Men outsource vulnerability to friends or therapists rather than share it at home. Intimacy is replaced by guardedness. The personal toll is quiet but severe. Loneliness, numbness, and the slow erosion of identity. Younger men watch older generations pay heavy prices. They learn caution. They learn to compartmentalize. They learn that certain expressions of distress are career-ending. So they modify behavior. They trade authenticity for protection. Change requires reframing how we value emotion. We must stop equating loud feeling with truth and whispered frustration with threat. Systems should weigh evidence over performance. Support should be conditional on facts, not theatricality. Start small, insist on clarity. Document interactions. Ask for specifics when faced with sweeping claims. Set boundaries around destructive expression. Teach that respect is earned by action, not assumed because someone cries. This isn't about dismissing suffering. It's about restoring balance. Feelings deserve compassion, but fairness demands verification. When both are honored, trust can return and men won't have to choose between safety and honesty. Hold accountable the storytellers and the systems that amplify them. Demand procedures that protect everyone. Encourage men to reclaim language for their pain without fear. Rebuild institutions to privilege investigation over instinct. Only then will honest partnership be possible, and men might risk showing up fully without wagering their future on someone else's narrative. Change starts with small acts. Men are leaving because the math finally adds up against staying. The modern arrangement demands constant giving with no guarantee of return. You pour time, attention, and money into a system where reciprocity is optional and consequences are asymmetric. That imbalance adds up over years. Men do the accounting quietly until one day totals show a lifetime of loss. Young men witness the fallout. They watch family courts skew outcomes, hear stories of false claims, and see fathers reduced to visitors in their own homes. They observe friends depleted emotionally and financially. Those images shape decisions. Risk-averse choices follow. Freedom becomes attractive when weighed against liability. Hobbies, entrepreneurship, travel, and brotherhood cost less emotionally and legally than traditional partnerships. Men trade obligation for agency, and the payoff is tangible. Sleep without drama, a bank account that isn't drained by another person's impulse, and time reclaimed for personal goals. Another factor is predictability. A relationship that demands constant negotiation and emotional management is inherently volatile. Volatility consumes energy and clouds judgment. Men prefer structures they can control or exit. They choose environments where outcomes are more certain. The cultural narrative once promised identity through partnership, family, legacy, shared purpose. That promise has frayed. Many engagements and marriages no longer deliver collaboration but contest. Shared goals dissolve into daily skirmishes over respect, time, and control. When the promised benefits vanish, so does the incentive to stay. Social approval used to be a strong motivator. Men sought status by building households and providing stability. Now the social reward has split. Some circles still honor traditional roles. Others mock them as naive. The mixed messaging weakens the cultural pressure to accept risk. There is also an economic calculation. Rising housing costs, unstable employment trends, and punitive legal systems make the price of commitment steeper. The cost of failure is higher, and the buffer for error is thinner. Rational minds weigh the downside and opt out when expected utility falls below the cost of participation. Emotional labor is undervalued and often outsourced to men without recognition. Men expected to manage crises, soothe partners, and absorb blame seldom get reciprocal care. That chronic imbalance reduces empathy over time. Men protect themselves by withdrawing emotional investment. Technology accelerates the exit. Dating apps lower the friction to connect superficially without deep commitment. Remote work and solo living make independence easier. Men discover they can fulfill social needs without binding contracts. Finally, pride in self-preservation is rising. Walking away from a bad bargain feels like wisdom, not cowardice. There is dignity in preserving one's mental health and financial security. The narrative is shifting from shame to agency. If nothing changes, the exodus grows. Offer fair deals, mutual accountability, and transparent expectations. Or accept that many will choose the safer, calmer path. Men are not fleeing intimacy, they are fleeing toxic terms. They will return when the terms are worth the risk. Respect, reciprocity, and safety will return them. When a man steps away long enough to breathe, the truth sharpens and his life rearranges itself. The fog that dulled his judgment begins to clear. He rediscovers priorities that were buried under constant caretaking. Hobbies ignite again. Old friendships resurface. Projects he shelved return to the front burner. Daily routine becomes intentional instead of reactionary. He relearns boundaries. Saying no becomes a muscle he can flex without guilt. Where he once softened language to avoid conflict, he now speaks with concise certainty. He sets expectations openly and enforces them calmly. People respond to consistency. Manipulation loses leverage against predictable standards. The relief of not managing someone else's feelings is immediate and profound. Free from emotional babysitting, he redirects compassion toward himself and toward relationships that reciprocate. His emotional bandwidth expands, allowing deeper presence with friends, family, and work. Intimacy becomes possible in places where it is mutual. Financial clarity follows. Money stops leaking into dramas and irresponsible spending. Savings grow because choices are deliberate. Investment in self becomes a priority: health, skill, and future independence. The security of a balanced ledger reflects an inner stability that was missing before. Time restores itself. Weeks no longer vanish in cycles of crisis management. He schedules his life around goals, not around emotional emergencies. Travel returns to plans rather than excuses. The calendar fills with moves that build a life rather than patch another person's chaos. Confidence rebuilds from consistent wins. Not the loud confidence that brags, but a quiet sturdiness grounded in competence. He takes risks aligned with values rather than reacting to pressure. This steadiness attracts people who value reciprocity and contribution instead of drama. When he meets someone new, choices are different. He evaluates compatibility with clarity. He asks direct questions about responsibility, long-term goals, and emotional accountability. He notices red flags earlier because his filter is sharper. He refuses to compromise core needs for short-term comfort. Isolation can sting at first, but it also teaches self-reliance. He learns to meet his needs intentionally. Loneliness becomes a space for growth rather than a panic signal. Over time, he experiences a deeper contentment that doesn't depend on external approval. The transformation is not instantaneous. There is withdrawal, regret, and adjustment. Yet the pain of leaving is often less than continuing to erode under unbalanced expectations. Growth replaces resentment when energy is invested wisely. In reclaiming himself, a man regains authorship of his life. Freedom translates into productivity, purpose, and peace. That reclamation is not abandonment of connection. It is an insistence on connection that respects both people involved. And once a man tastes that integrity, returning to dysfunction is rarely an option. He chooses dignity over obligation and thrives on deliberate independence. The moment she realizes you're done, a different kind of silence enters her world. One she can't manipulate, predict, or soothe. At first she pretends not to care. She mirrors your distance to protect her pride. She acts unfazed. She posts, she laughs, she entertains distractions. But beneath the performance, a restlessness grows. She keeps checking for signals you used to send without thinking. None arrive. That absence gnaws at her confidence. Her mind starts replaying every moment where she held the upper hand. The time she dismissed your concerns. The time she used attitude as leverage. The time she assumed you'd chase no matter how cold she became. She remembers how effortlessly you forgave, how you carried the emotional load of the relationship. Now she sees the imbalance with clarity she once avoided. The shift becomes undeniable when she realizes you're not reacting. Reaction was her power source. Without it, she can't gauge your emotions, can't predict your next move, can't pull you back into orbit. Your indifference creates a vacuum, and she feels it like a sudden drop in temperature. Guilt arrives next. Not the guilt of someone who feels sorry, but the guilt of someone who miscalculated. She thought she had time. She thought she could push harder, withdraw longer, test deeper. She never expected you to detach completely. Men rarely do in her experience. But you did. Then comes the internal war. Pride tells her to stay silent. Fear tells her to reach out. She composes messages she never sends. She hovers over your profile more than she'll ever admit. She asks mutual friends subtle questions, hoping to hear you're struggling. Instead, she hears you're improving, stabilizing, focusing. That cuts deeper than any breakup line. Your growth is a mirror she can't escape. It exposes everything she neglected in herself and in you. She sees the version of you she tried to control becoming a version she can never influence again. That loss feels heavier than she expected. It forces reflection she never wanted to face. She will try to re-enter subtly. A like, a comment, a random, "hope you're well." These aren't coincidences. They're pulses sent out to check if the connection still exists. She wants confirmation that you're still the man who cared too deeply. When she receives no pull, no warmth, no reciprocation, panic sets in. Because now she understands something she never considered. Your silence is not a tactic. It's a decision. She realizes you've outgrown the dynamic she depended on. You're no longer negotiating your worth or begging for emotional crumbs. You're operating on a new standard, one she never thought you'd adopt. That's when regret becomes real. Not because she lost a man, but because she lost the version of you she controlled. The version she took for granted. The version she never thought would evolve beyond her reach. By the time she accepts it, you've moved on mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You are no longer part of her story. And that truth hits harder than heartbreak ever could. If this message hit home, make sure you subscribe, because the man you're becoming deserves guidance, not guesswork. Stay sharp, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next one.